Hello and welcome to Marketing in the Madness. This week I am speaking to Caroline Harrison.
So Caroline Harrison, I head up digital marketing at HSBC in the UK. What else would you like to know?
I would say you're probably working in one of the most interesting spaces. There's so much that's happening.
We've probably learned more in the last 12 months than we've done before. I realised actually you could build huge campaigns and drive thousands of sales without any money if you're crafty enough.
But I think what you've built is a fantastic culture, and that's what's enabled you guys to innovate and grow.
I encourage my team to dream big. I thought I was busy before babies, and then now I realise you do half a day's job before you even get to the office at 8 o'clock.
We all become amazing project managers, I would say, as parents. Hello and welcome to Marketing in the Madness. This week I am speaking to Caroline Harrison. Caroline is the head of marketing at HSBC and leads a team of around 40 from digital leaders, marketing leaders across HSBC who are really changing the face of marketing. I think it is something that is so important to all of us, our finances, how we choose to spend our money, where we choose to invest our money. There is so much that Caroline is involved with, and she's really made some huge, I would say, seismic changes in the, I think, around 10 years that she's been at HSBC. She's made some incredible changes, not just to the business and how, marketing is happening within the finance industry, but also the fantastic things she's doing to inspire other women in leadership positions across marketing, and specifically in a fairly male-dominated financial sector. So without further ado, let's go and meet the fantastic Caroline Harrison. Welcome to Marketing the Madness. I'm super excited to have you here today, not only because you work in a space which I work with a lot of clients in the kind of digital transformation space, but also because you're at the bank that I first ever started banking with. So the kind of marketing tactics and some of the things that you guys have done over the years at HSBC have been really inspirational to me, and I guess part of my own journey way back when. So before we get started and start to dig into marketing tactics and everything that we're going to cover today, can you tell me a little bit about you and your career to date?
Sure, you're too kind. Thank you so much for having me. Total pleasure. So Caroline Harrison, I head up digital marketing at HSBC in the UK. What else would you like to know?
Well, why don't we start with your career history? So I know that you've had a few different roles. So tell me about, I guess, how you got to being Caroline, heading up digital transformation at HSBC and the kind of marketing that you guys are leading. So it'd be great to know a little bit more about your backstory, I guess how you started,
Sure.
What got you here.
Sure. I wanted to be a show jumper, so in some ways I've totally failed, right? But I've always worked in marketing. I've always loved marketing. It was always a thing at uni that I was just best at, and I found it it's just common sense and easy for me. So I kind of continued to do it. And I've worked for banks nearly all my life. I worked for Santander for 7 years, and then I contracted for a little while. So I've worked for American Express, for Barclays, for GE, for Citi, and then I joined HSBC about 5 years or so ago. And I've always worked in digital marketing, so a bit of a one-trick pony really, but I kind of love it. And I mean, you kind of mentioned things change a lot, and they totally do. So I've yet to get bored, and so still going. So I joined HSBC 5 years or so ago, and they actually hired me to look after affiliate marketing. And when I arrived, I thought, big company like HSBC, it's going to be a really cushy job, right? It's going to be amazing setup. Everything's going to be amazing. Going to have big juicy budgets. And I arrived, and they said, actually, you can look after digital marketing. And I realised it was a small team of 4, and they hadn't really even got the basics set up. So I spent the first 2 years literally just setting up real fundamentals, making sure we could tag things, track things, we could measure things, so we knew when we were doing something, what it had done. And then building a team. And then I fast forward to today, and HSBC have been so good to me. I think I've been promoted 3 or 4 times whilst I've been there. And then now I look after a team of about 30, 40 marketeers. And the team looks after all the digital marketing for HSBC in the UK across all lines of the bank. So the retail bank, private bank, commercial bank, all the brands. So we've got Marks and Spencer's and First Direct and HSBC, and then all product lines. So everything from current accounts to mortgages, loans, all sorts. So yeah, it's never boring. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. And do you know what? You work in, I guess what historically, financial services would be seen as, I'm just going to say it, maybe not the most exciting of industries to be in. But I think now, because of the kind of fintech, finserv revolution that's happened, and I guess the importance of money to all of us, it's not something any of us can escape. I would say you're probably working in one of the most interesting spaces. There's so much that's happening. There's so much innovation happened in your sector. I think you guys have probably experienced one of the, I guess, I think at one point I wrote an article about it actually around the fintech, finserv revolution. So there's been a lot of change in your sector. So having worked at a few different banks, I'm not necessarily just talking about HSBC here. What have you guys been working on? Because there's been a huge amount of innovation in terms of people like Revolut coming in.
Yeah.
The banks that, and I know this as someone that obviously has my own bank account, but also business banking. Like you guys, and certainly the bigger finserv organisations such as HSBC have had quite a lot to, I guess, change in order to keep up with the Revoluts and others, Monzos, etc. So what's going on for you guys, and how's that been for you working at some of these bigger financial institutions?
Well, at the heart of what I love doing is making a difference and fundamentally changing things for the better. So I've loved it. But what essentially I suppose has happened is, in the olden days, or even 20 years ago, or even probably 10 years ago, the majority of people went to a branch to do their banking, whereas these days, the vast majority do it online or via their mobile. And so HSBC has been on a journey, and in fact, lots of the banks have, probably over the course of the last 5-10 years, to make sure that you can do everything that you want on the mobile, on the internet, rather than go into a branch. And now, I think when I first joined the bank, about 20% of sales were done online, and now it's over 90%. So the business has transformed. They've got hundreds of developers working on all the online journeys and making sure you can do everything that you want to do. I love the fact that we've had loads of the neobanks come along and they've just disrupted it. It's meant that you can't just sort of sit on your laurels and do the same thing that you've done before. And we're doing everything we can to make sure that we can replicate some of that functionality. You can even pay a check-in via your app these days, or check your balance, do everything. Almost everything you want to do is possible, but there's still more to be done. And I think customers' expectations as well have just gone through the roof. People just expect, Apple are incredible, right? You just pick it up. You don't need to read any instructions. I'm very happy with that. It just kind of works, and I think banking needs to do exactly the same. So, yeah, I feel like it's an awesome job, because in some ways your job is never done, but your job is never done. I wonder what it'd be like to work for somebody where you put your pen down at 5 o'clock and think, nailed it, all done. I've never had a day like that.
No, and I don't think we ever will now. I think the world moves at such a pace, and you're right. We're so used to the Amazons, the Apples, the everything being instant. You can order stuff on Amazon and have it on the same day now. Like you say, we can pay checks in on our mobile phones. There is no time to wait, which puts the pressure on businesses to keep up and to make change and evolve really, really quickly. So it sounds like you've been on that journey, certainly going from a team of 3 or 4 people to now, like you say, around 40 people.
I don't know how that happened, by the way.
I know. I mean, that in itself.
I'm just little old me, and they're like, my kids and my husband are a bit like, really? They let you do that?
Yeah, amazing. But what has that meant in terms of, so I guess, like you say, you've got to make some, changes pretty quickly in the world that we all live in now. So what does that mean for you as a business, and how you manage your team and, make sure that you can keep up?
For me, I see my job as very simple. I've got a budget and a set of sales targets, and I move that money to wherever I think it can drive the best possible result. I'm always looking at efficiency, effectiveness, and in this day and age, especially in my world, digital, everything is tagged and tracked, and so it's very data led. So these days, I can follow the numbers, and I find people find it difficult to argue with you when you follow the numbers, right? So What have I done? I've invested heavily in training. I've tried to hire the best people I can find, the people that scare the bejesus out of me. I have invested in marketing technology. These days, you can get the most amazing tools. There's an awful lot of automation, even AI that's coming along that just still blows my mind. I found that there's no silver bullet. You can't, for the first probably 10 years of my career, I thought if I can come up with one really great idea, I can just do that and put my feet up. I've never yet found it. It's making sure that you've got the fundamentals in place and then building on that. And then in terms of media, quite often it's so diverse these days. You can't kind of do just one thing. You've got to be able to have fingers in different pies and lots of testing. So I encourage my team to dream big, is probably the first thing. And when I say that, I mean, quite often, especially, and I don't know whether it's just a female thing, I think we underestimate what we can do. So sometimes if you come up with a good idea and think we can do we can make 100 of them, I encourage them to go for 200 and plan to that. So actually they'll surpass their original expectations of themselves, and they may not get to 200, but if they get to 150, that's still 50% more than what they thought they could do, right? I've forgotten what point 2 was. I think it was testing. And in terms of nearly everything we do, I just employ the old, let's keep 70% safe and what we've tried and tested and we've done before. 20% let's test new things, and then 10% let's do something that's ridiculous. It may or it may not come off, but actually it's going to drive us forward. And these days I can't call what's going to work and what isn't going to work. It always surprises me.
And that's the thing, having that, you've got such an entrepreneurial attitude, which I think sometimes we think in big businesses I
think I'm a bit naughty for banking, but which is quite risk adverse, but I like taking a bit of a risk, obviously in a measured way. It's highly regulated, right? But I think especially with the creatives and things that you can do, why not do that? Because you're never going to know what's good. The same thing doesn't work for everybody either as well. So
yeah, of course, everything is up for grabs nowadays. You just don't know what's going to work, what's going to land, and what isn't going to work. So I'm going to ask a mean question. Hopefully you say you're allowed to answer it. So you said 10% is the kind of crazy, weird, wonderful, super innovative things that you've explored over the past however long. Which one was your favourite, and can you tell me anything about it? Or which one worked the best, I guess, that you maybe thought wouldn't?
The memorable ones are the ones that don't work, right?
Yeah. But we learn so much from those.
You know what you
about that,
do.
then.
You absolutely do. And I think you've got to, as marketeers, I think there's a perception that some people think we just we brief an agency, we pay the money, and then we see what happens at the end. And all the juice comes out from optimizing a campaign all the way through. So, and quite often you've got to learn what doesn't work before you learn what does work. I think some of my favourite campaigns are probably the ones where we've worked with third parties on betas. And that's not just necessarily because of the value that it's come off the back of it, just because I come from a place where, when I arrived 5 years ago, we weren't even doing the basics, whereas now we are working with some of these huge tech partners like Beta and Amazon, participating in betas, which I never ever thought we'd do. And that makes the team buzzier, I guess. They know that they're doing cutting edge stuff, and I want them to be the most wanted, not because they've done something illegal, but because they've done something that'll put them on the map. So after they've worked in my team, they can get a job anywhere.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. And that it's that attitude that I think really drives teams forward, because you're challenging them to go and, almost not to get in trouble, like you say, be the most wanted, but actually trying to kind of push that perception that actually if I do something wrong, it's not going to be the end of the world. I think that really helps drive innovation. And what I see happens a lot of the time, even when we're running campaigns for clients, is clients expect, or you guys are our clients, so or the business expects often to see results more quickly than is realistic. And sometimes you do, but a lot of the time you've got to sit with it and you've got to give it time to bed in and grow and perform. And I think, often people will try something and they'll step away a little bit too soon before the campaign or the idea or the marketing initiative or the tactic has actually had time to get working and bed in.
One of the first fundamental changes I implemented at HSBC was moving from campaign-based to always on. because in my mind, there's almost the same amount of work up front in building the campaign. But why would you just run it for 6 weeks when actually you could just leave it permanently on, and then you get better and better and better at it. You iterate the creative, and it just gets better. So I push wherever possible for always on. And then actually just in terms of how you flight it and things, you just follow the seasonality. So I think it's because I'm lazy, but actually that just makes better sense, and you get more for your money that way. So
yeah. Totally. So tell me about a campaign. I won't be as mean this time. A campaign that has worked really well, like in terms of, obviously your time. And it doesn't. Let's talk about HSBC first, and then we can talk about other roles that you've had. But is there something that you can stand behind and be like, I'm really proud? And some of them we may even know about, because we are your end consumers at the end of the day. But is there a campaign that you're really proud of that really delivered, maybe even more than you expected it to?
We started promoting wealth products last year, and historically that was the first for us. We've talked about, we've promoted savings, but not necessarily. And so we were trying to encourage more people to invest. And actually, you can invest for as little as £1 these days. And I think when you talk about investing, most people think, oh, you must need to have thousands of pounds. It's really complicated and hard. It's not for me. So I wanted to build a campaign that made it talk to the everyday person on the street, mums sitting in play centres that have got 5 minutes, anybody. So we devised a campaign that basically says you can invest for as little as £1, and you can do it in your app. So all you need is 5 minutes. And then we did lots of contextual advertising, outside loos, outside play centres. I'm trying to think where else we did it. I don't know. And it just worked incredibly well. So it was the first time we'd ever delivered a wealth campaign. We're obviously trying to drive leads rather than sales. So the metrics weren't quite the ones that we would usually do, but the results were incredible. So that was something that we did for the first time last year. And then this year we've just continued it on and done more iterations of creative. We had, I don't know if you've seen them, pictures of a guy with his children painting his nails, and with his mobile phone investing at the same time. But I just wanted to bring it right down to making people realise that it's actually really quick and easy to do, and you don't have to invest a lot. They don't have to be high risk. There's all, there's a proper spectrum. And then in terms of business results, I think it beat all our expectations. So it was a nice one to work on. But my brain then goes to, what other things are we not currently promoting that we should be doing and that we're missing a trick on? And it's interesting, this year at HSBC, actually, my budget almost halved year on year. And I mean, the team that found that challenging, right? It's almost just like cutting someone's pocket money in half, I suppose. You imagine your kids' faces when you say that to them. But actually, it forced us, there's no way in a world like that you can just continue to do the stuff that you've done historically. Instead, we had to just rip up the old plans and say, right, in a new world where we've got a very different budget, how are we going to cut through and make this fundamentally different? And it did mean we stopped promoting some products altogether. We literally just backed our strongest horses and then went for it. And so it's been a very different year, but we've probably learned more in the last 12 months than we've done before. So yeah, with challenges come good opportunities, I suppose, that you learn from.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? Often, I mean, I think we've all experienced this over the past few years because the world was turned upside down. But when you're amidst, the biggest challenges or the biggest downturns, often, something like having your budgets slashed in half is going to drive innovation, because you're going to have to think differently about how you approach things.
Yeah.
And I think that's where often the real magic happens, and we learn so much from those kind of things happening to us, and it really does enable business growth. I think it's been a game changer for all of us over the past few years.
And I love it when you can come up with a crafty, innovative idea that actually doesn't cost a lot but drives a big return. So I worked for the Times, for News UK for a couple of years, and they were an incredible business for that. So while I was there, my job was to drive digital subscriptions. So pretty much the same job as I've always done, driving online sales, right? But I had almost no budget while I was there, but I could offer up space in the newspaper in return for, like Contra for getting something else. So while I was there, I brokered deals with Apple for iPads, coffee machines for Nespresso, anything. And we would give somebody a digital subscription, a free gift, and then work hard to try and get them to stay with us afterwards. And I realised actually you could build huge campaigns and drive thousands of sales without any money if you're crafty enough.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, which often feels, harder to do when you're in a big business. So culturally, how do you, someone like News UK, hearing that they can be that flexible, and actually at HSBC as well, not creating too many layers of hierarchy, too many hoops to jump through. It sounds like in most of your positions, and you as a person have quite an open view in terms of letting people try things. So how do you create that culture within a business and I guess a sector where there is a fair bit of red tape?
We have to make sure that we obviously do everything we need to do. Everything is fully approved by legal. So I suppose relative to lots of other sectors, it's still pretty heavy in terms of processes and red tape. Saying that, in my mind, that's like 10% of your role. You just kind of do that with your eyes shut, and then you can concentrate on the rest.
Yeah.
How do I do it? I don't know. You kind of learn from how you've been managed in the past and try and replicate the things that people did that you loved, and then avoid the stuff that you hated, right? So I guess I'm definitely more carrot than stick, but I encourage people to do almost like become T-shaped. So they've got a deep digital knowledge in one area, but then they've got a broad experience of everything else. And so even if their core role is maybe managing pay-per-click advertising on Google, I'd encourage them to get in a project and whatever their passion is, right? Because I think if you love something, then you're going to do better at it and throw more love into it anyway. Get them to do a project that probably cuts across more channels. So whether that is you're setting up a new agency or you're managing a brief or a campaign or whatever. So you give them, I call it juiciness, but just things that keep them interested and they can carry on learning. And then my hope is that they stay with me for longer. And I think they do. I think I read somewhere that in digital roles, and I'm recruited at the moment looking at CVs, and people jump around quite a lot. But my guys on average have probably been with me 3-4 years plus. So we must be doing something right. But it's probably surprising, but I tend to treat them all differently. People need different things. Some people you need to stroke their hair. Others you want carrots. Some people it's all about pace. Some people want, a very broad remit. I'm not precious about who does what, and I encourage them to have their own special sort of, I call them ninja skills, and the team tease me for it. But they've got their own ninja skills, and then they pull together so that they're not competing, because I've worked places before where everyone's treated exactly the same, but you're almost competing head to head, and it's not comfortable. I want them to feel like we've got their backs, and they know I've got their back. So there's space to make mistakes, but there's also space to make, huge gains.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like you are making those huge gains as well by creating a culture and growing a team that have got the freedom to go and try these new things.
And you've got to do it in your own way, right? I mean, sometimes people will say, what do you think about this? And quite often I'll reflect it back and say, what do you think? And even if I didn't think that's what I would do or what I'd think, I say yes, because they've got to learn, they've got to do it. And I think sometimes just building their confidence and making them realise I've got their backs matters more than whether it's a cat or a dog in the picture. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm so with you on that. So your team of 30-40.
Yeah.
I've got some questions about this. And what is that makeup? Is it developers? Is it marketeers? How has that team evolved and grown to be the team it is today?
Sure. Almost all marketeers. So I've got, I always say the core team is a team of two halves. I've almost got like product marketeers that will look after a product, so like current accounts or savings or mortgages. And normally you would put it as customer segments, right? But HSBC is built in, all the product teams and everything are all product silos. So that's the only way I can keep the wheels on. And their job really is to look after the budget and work out what the media plans and manage the activity. So they'll work with the agency. And then we've also got like an internal media team. So I've got a head of media, and then we've hired sort of digital experts in almost every channel. So we've got a search expert, a social, affiliates, and then we've in-housed some of the channels. So some media we manage via an external digital agency, and then others we do end-to-end ourselves. So search we in-housed a couple of years ago. So we manage all of that ourselves now. So that's sort of two small teams. From January this year, I acquired the UK website team. So that's a team of people that look after almost the skeleton of the retail bank website. And then I've got a small and growing team that are looking after existing customer marketing. So they develop all the communications that go to the existing base. So at the moment, one of the biggest challenges is trying to squish it all together and make sure that we've got one plan that cuts across paid, owned and earned. Historically, I've just spent the money and looked after paid, but really it makes sense to make sure you make the most use of what you've got already and then go out right.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite amazing the size of the team that you've created over the past few years.
Yeah, but I mean, I've got amazing people in there, right? So really,
Yeah.
I just look after them, and they look after all the good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as time goes on, I feel like the plan was always to like share with them anything that I knew and train them up so that I could just kind of eat my way out slowly and then put my feet up for half the year. It never quite happened, but that is still my plan, right?
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
But I think what you've built is a fantastic culture, and that's what's enabled you guys to innovate and grow and really, make the changes that you've
They still
made.
keep me on my toes. And I mean, I think the hardest part of the job sometimes is just managing people, right? Because especially you talked about COVID before, that was hard for some people. I've got a lot of sort of young international people in my team that were here, some of them, with, one parent families with a child or children. And then when that hit, they were like, what do I do if I get ill or if he gets ill?
But it was tough.
Yeah, well, for that one, someone came to me and said, what do I do? And I trotted back to HR and said, what do I do? And they're like, give them HR's number and see if they can give them any counselling. I thought, that's not going to be what they want. Really, you just want to know that if you get ill or you fall, someone's going to catch you, right?
Yeah.
So I went back to her and said, if you're poorly or your son's poorly, you can come and live with me. I'll come and get you and you'll stay with me. And she just kind of looked at me, but... And when I told my husband, he was like, when's she moving in? I was like, no. He's not moving in. It's just, in case that the worst happens.
Yeah.
But I mean, it all came good, right? Because he sorted out the spare room. And up until that point, it had just been a hellhole. So it worked, right?
But it's true, though. It is, I think I talk about this a lot on the podcast. And it's about humanizing things and helping each other. And whether you're an agency or a business or brand, however you want to kind of refer to yourselves, at the end of the day, we're all people that are making this happen. Yes, we use technology. Yes, we use, some very clever technologies and data and, AI to help us navigate what's happening, and look at, behaviors and things that we could do to improve things. But it still doesn't, you've still got to have the people there and you've still got to support the people to make that stuff happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've got to want to do it, I think. I try and find people that are passionate, and if you slice them through the middle, their heartbeat's digital because it changes so much. It's not like these days, I don't think you can just do a course and then that's it, you can nail it. You've kind of just got to keep your ear to the ground and keep your toe in the water just to keep going. And I mean, I find it tough, right? It changes week on week. And I think, gosh, there's something else that I haven't thought about. What am I going to do?
Yeah. Well, you've started to touch on something there that kind of leads into one of my other, I guess, very close to my heart. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I talk about a lot on the podcast, which is around how businesses can better support females to kind of grow in their career. And it sounds like you as a person, and certainly HSBC, have got some pretty good policies in place to help support the staff and make sure, that you're all able to grow. Is there anything, I mean, obviously, again, FinServe, traditionally, we think of, bankers and a fairly male-dominated world.
Yeah.
Is there anything that HSBC do that really helps, I guess, you leading a team, being a female? There's going to have been some challenges along that journey, but is there anything, I guess, that you've experienced and or HSBC do that really helps empower women to kind of grow in their careers?
They are trying to redress the balance, but it's not 50-50, right? But they're trying. No. They've introduced quite a few sort of schemes to try and bring more females through to leadership. So they kind of identify top performers and then invest in you, and then encourage you to go for other roles. And I think sometimes you need to do that because I don't think I've ever yet gone for a job. Someone's tapped me on the shoulder and said, you should apply for this. And I've kind of done a bit of a really? You think I could? And then I went on and got it. So, and I think quite often as females, we underestimate what we're capable and we never put ourselves forward for a job unless we think we can nail all of it. But that doesn't make sense. Quite often men do that when they can do 40% of the job, right? But it makes sense to do a job that you've got growth in. You need to learn. So why would you take on a role that you can do everything in anyway? I'm kind of like preaching, but I don't do that myself. But do you know what I mean? I'm trying. So what else have they done? I don't know. They're just quite good at, I guess, identifying people that are good and then investing in them. So for me, for example, they tapped me on the shoulder one day and said, would you be interested in doing an MBA? And I thought, I don't know if I'm clever enough for that. And so, but they offered to pay for it. They gave me 20% off of my work time to do it. And so, and then COVID hit too. And I thought I'm going to have a bit of spare time. So I did that for the last 2 years. And I mean, it's something I wouldn't probably have done ordinarily. I'm trying to think what else we do.
What did you study? What was your MBA?
In executive management. So it was partly marketing, but finance and everything else. So, but you know what? I think more than anything, it increased my confidence, because I just thought I was a one-trick pony, and I realised a lot of the skills that I've learned in digital marketing are transferable. But I just kind of figured that's I've made my bed and I'm going to lie on it, So hopefully there are other things on the horizon for me. The other thing which I think I feel quite passionate about is that, I mean, I've got 3 children, and I find balancing looking after them, my babies, and work tricky, right? I think
God, yeah.
As a mum, you always feel guilty when you're not with doing what the other bit. And I took a year off with each of my children when they were babies, but I found going back to work afterwards tricky, because I thought no one's going to want me when I've been out for 12 months. And so I try to make sure that on every job description, every time we advertise a role, we say we welcome back people from maternity. We're open to flexible working, job shares, hybrid, because I think it's a travesty that people do incredible jobs. They have children, and then I've got quite a few friends that take a year off, 2 years, or even 5 years, or whatever they do, and then they feel they can't go back, and they end up doing something not a shadow of what they did before, which I just can't help feeling it's a waste, and they've still got a lot to add. I personally don't think it matters if you've taken a big chunk of time out, because I don't know if you're like me, but after I had babies, I grew up a lot. And then I thought I was busy before babies. And then now I realise you do half a day's job before you even get to the office at 8 o'clock. So I applaud people that can do both.
Yeah, I think, like you say, you learn so much from becoming a parent, especially a mother, the juggling, being, the planning. I mean, we all become amazing project managers, I would say, as parents. Like, you have to think so far into the future about how you're going to manage this, how you're going to do. So I think there's so many transferable skills from becoming a mum and a parent that you can then apply to your work. And I'm so with you on, I definitely think the world is getting better at allowing women to come back to work in a more flexible manner, but there's still so much more that we can do to enable, a better balance. And I advocate the businesses. I'm a huge advocate of the businesses, that are doing things like letting people, letting the man or the woman take the, maternity or paternity leave. Just becoming a bit more flexible. And in fact, one of my senior leadership team did exactly that. She shared her do you call it pat leave? I've never heard it called pat leave, but I'm going to mat and pat leave. So that, because she was desperate to come. She was like, I'm only going to take 6 months off. I don't want it, because her career is really important. And I think, to her and to most of us, as women, we're not, we are mothers, and that is hugely important, but we're also people. And, more often, nowadays, I think, we want to still be a person and do great work, as well as hopefully being able to balance it with being a great mum. But oh my goodness, is it tough.
I've got a 9-year-old, and I asked her what she wanted to be when she grows up, and she just said, I don't want a job, I just want to marry someone rich. And I just thought, oh my God, no, Arabella, no.
No.
I'll work on that.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? I think
she just thinks that she sees me working long hours, and I mean, I do Monday to Friday, but I have never worked a weekend in my life, and I think I'd be divorced if I did, right? I think, I work hard during the week, but weekend is family.
Yeah, you've got your balance.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, I think there's so much more that we can do to create more flexible working. But it sounds like you're doing a great job of creating
we've got,
that.
So at First Direct, we've got a creche on site, I think. So yeah, not quite the same in HSBC Tower and Canary Wharf, but people come in later, start, go to the gym at lunchtime. I'm super flexible. And as long as they get the job done, I don't mind what hours they do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm an early bird, so I'm normally in early, and then 5 o'clock I'm gone.
Yeah, but that's a great. Do you know what? It's those. Gosh, I mean, I've had employers where and it was literally, I had 15 minutes from drop off to get into the office, and I would work late. I would always, it's hard, balancing being, and I was a single mum, or I still am a single mum, I had 15 minutes. They didn't have my daughter was at a very small school. They had no breakfast club. So I had between 8:45 and 9, and this is pre-COVID when we all had to be in the office every day.
Yeah.
And they knew that when they employed me, yet I still got reprimanded for turning up 2 minutes late, 5 minutes late, because I couldn't find parking because they didn't have parking nearby. And I'm like, that. I hope that employer and also the world of work is changing now, because I was doing a fantastic job. I was working hard. Does it matter if I'm 5 minutes late? It really, I think most businesses now have adopted slightly more modern approaches to the world of work that give flexibility. And like you say, as long as people are doing a good job and getting their work done.
I think they have to, because especially in the digital world, there's not an abundance of people that are waiting for, so they're going to go for the roles that suits them best. And I think anybody wants flexibility right these days.
Yeah. Can I ask one question about you? So you're saying First Direct have a crash. Does it get used?
I don't know what the usage is off the top of my head. I've got no idea. But no, they do. I think they've got even a farmer's market that comes in once a fortnight as well.
Amazing.
I mean, I went there and just thought, this is brilliant. But I mean, it's in Leeds. It's not super close to where I live. But so they're good. They're quite a family. It feels like a family First Direct. It's nice.
Yeah, good. I mean, that is one of the kind of feelings that you get.
You could probably guess that from the outside.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
And it's very much like that.
Marketing it well. So I've got one last question before I let you get back to running your amazing team and making all the fantastic changes that you're making in the world of financial services. Guests. So I'm always looking for inspirational marketing leaders to come on the show, talk to me about what they're up to, uncover, all the kind of stuff we've spoken about today. Is there anyone that you look up to in the industry that you think would be a great guest for the podcast, someone that you work with, someone that you'd like to hear from that maybe you listen to or follow in the industry?
Oh, good question. I follow so many people, and I tend to go outside of sector and I think you get the ideas from places unexpected, right? I'm trying to think who's good. I don't know. Most of my colleagues are in Cannes this week.
I know, everyone's in Cannes.
And when I went there last year, I watched Ryan Reynolds give a talk. He was incredible. If you could get Ryan Reynolds, that'd be impressive.
Well, I mean, Ryan,
it's hard not to like him.
Oh my God, I'm so, who you've just picked, like my major celebrity crush. So
when I was there, we were in the queue waiting to watch him talk, and watched one woman run and push people to get to the front, and she turned around and saw, I think, the horror on my face and said, I know, but I don't care.
I get it. It's Ryan Reynolds.
I've got no shame. I thought, wow, yeah,
I love that.
I had to stop myself from doing the same, but I thought, no, be a lady.
But you're right, he's done some really great stuff, and actually is, as well as being an amazing actor, celebrity.
Yeah, so he's got his own marketing agency, I think, that he just does on the side. So I'm sure he's a pretty busy boy.
Yeah, he is a busy boy. But we're coming after you, Ryan. Fabulous. Caroline, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I've learned so much. It's been really interesting to understand more about the world of HSBC and everything you're doing. So big thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Hey guys, it's me again, Katie Street. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. If you did, I want to ask you a really big favor, because it will help us reach and help more people. Can you head over to Spotify and or Apple Podcasts and give us a little 5-star review? On Apple Podcasts, you can also leave us a little comment about what you love. I love to hear from you. We're only a few weeks into launching the podcast, and we've already had some fantastic reviews. I love hearing from you. Please, any tips, anything you want more of, less of, feel free to put it there in the comments. But yeah, a big thank you. Do go give us a follow, and I hope to see you back here very soon.